Hi folks, and welcome to another Man Up video with Dan and I. And today we are joined by the High Sheriff of Suffolk, also known as Edward Creasy. And we're going to have a chat about mental health and how he deals with it, the needs of folks in Suffolk. So yeah, let's kick off. Edward, firstly, how are you? And can you tell us a little bit about what is a High Sheriff and what do you get up to in that role?
First of all, Jordan, Dan, I'm very well. It's very good to see you. So very briefly, a High Sheriff. High Sheriff is a very interesting position. It's the second oldest institution in the United Kingdom behind the royalty. So it was a position that was set up in the 8th century AD, and that was before Alfred burnt his cakes. And you will get some idea then that as the appointment is only for a year, it's the office rather than Edward Creasy who is most important. And the office is all about being the Queen's representative for the judiciary system and the judiciary in Suffolk, and making sure that the judiciary is running well and effectively, and that everyone is properly served by it. So I do spend quite a lot of time in the courts talking to the judges and everything else. But of course, for a judicial system to run well, the community as a whole has to believe that the justice is being properly served. So the job goes beyond just making sure the courts are running well, into making sure that the community believes and trusts in those systems that are set up to protect it. So as a result, I stretch very much into the community to make sure that the community is doing well, the community is happy, that those who serve the community, and in this I would include MANUP, are properly recognised for all the work they do for Suffolk as a whole. And it may be parts of the community of Suffolk, it may be a geographical sector, it may be a demographic sector, it may be a sector who is suffering from a particular issue like mental health. But I'm here to support people who work to make the place better. And of course, that includes diversity and inclusion, it includes the whole lot. So I spend a lot of time talking to and supporting charities who support our community as a whole.
That's wow. Excellent. Thank you. I feel like you've had a history lesson there, Dan.
No, I do. But the first thing I'm just going to jump straight in, if I can be honest with you. That is one heck of a burden.
Yes, Dan, it is. Yeah, and in a sense, the fact it's only a year long makes that burden slightly less, but it is a responsibility. It is very daunting, and it is something that I think during the year that you are High Sheriff, you think about the whole time.
Yeah, wow. But how do you not let? How do you? Excuse me, so I've got a cold. But how do you not let? Because well, I'm going this one, so I do apologise. But you can't please. You can only please 80% of people. So how do you deal? How do you deal with that? I would struggle with that.
Yeah, all through my life, I suppose, and this comes down to the mental health stuff and everything else. As an individual, I've always talked to myself, and indeed I've talked to my children about it, that you can only do your best, and that if you can look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and think that you've done jobs in the day to the best of your ability, then that's okay. And you are absolutely right. There will always be people who, whoever we are, don't like how we sound, how we look, everything else. They won't appreciate what we do, but I think you just have to accept that. That is part of life, and we can only do as well as we can. And that to me is a driving credo behind actually getting out of bed and doing the job, whatever that job may be.
Wow. You got anything to ask there, Jordan? That was a good
I
reply.
do. I do. And I suppose obviously Edward, or the sort of the role, it's obviously the remit is Suffolk. And given that we're sort of now easing out of restrictions and the sun's out and everything's lovely, do you feel like that will be an end to some of those mental health challenges that folks have faced over the last 12 months? Or do you feel like we're about to head into something totally new, and that, you know, should we be taking our foot off the gas with mental health a little bit now that lockdown's easing and we're coming out of COVID?
I think actually just the opposite, Jordan. I think one of the things that the pandemic has done is to make us sort of hide away during the 15 months. And I think as we come out of lockdown and that guard slips away, whether it's personal or from a community point of view, I think we'll begin to see real problems that the last 15 months have caused in terms of isolation, in terms of mental health, in terms of physical health, in terms of domestic abuse, in terms of relationship breakdown. I think the next 12 to 24 months are going to be as challenging as the last 15 months have been. And I think everyone involved in helping people with mental health problems should appreciate that, and that there should be, as it were, a call to arms for us all to appreciate the issues that we're about to face.
I think that's a really interesting sort of spin on things. And in terms of, you know, how do you cope with some of the stresses that go on? Because I know that you've got more roles than obviously High Sheriff, and that you're a busy chap outside of that as well. You know, how do you cope with some of those stresses? You know, how do you switch off and deal with your mental health?
That's a great question. And, you know, being open about it, I have suffered in a minor way from mental health problems, particularly when I was working as the chief executive of a large international company. All got too much. So I know what the symptoms are. I know what it feels like. I know that it is an extraordinary disease in a way, because it affects people in ways that they wouldn't believe until it arrives on your doorstep. So how I cope with it? Well, exercise and thinking time are both very, very important to me. So my ability to collect my thoughts at the beginning and the end of the day, it's almost, this sounds rather odd, but it's almost self CBT, in that you're walking and you're having a chat with yourself and making sure that you've got things in your own mind. So you relieve the pressure that you get from the day-to-day decisions and stresses that you get in the morning and in the evening. And I've always found that from my personal point of view, it may not suit everyone, but from my personal point of view, that helps immensely.
Well, that's fantastic. And also, you know, so you mentioned there around being the chief executive of an organisation. How important is it that we look after staff's well-being as a part of that as well?
Oh, it's crucial. And again, the amazing thing is that if I go back 15 years, and I'm old enough to remember what happened 15 years ago, mental health wasn't really talked about. It was, you know, if you had mental health as an employee, you know, it was almost as though there was something wrong with you. Whilst if you had a cold or you broke your arm, you got much more sympathy for it. Move on 15 years, move on the work that you are doing, move on the work that so many brilliant charities are doing in this field. And the real victory to me about mental health is that it's no longer a stigma, that it's recognized as something that is as important as physical health that needs to be dealt with. And to me, this sounds rather a weak answer, but it's not. I think however big the organization you're working for, you have to treat each and every employee as a human being and recognize the issues that they may or may not have. And whilst you can't personally solve them, make sure that there are facilities and touch points within the organization which they can go to for help. And they can go to for help in privacy without feeling any kind of stigma at all about the fact that they may be suffering. The other thing, and I've always done this, is as a senior team, taking time out on a pretty regular basis to check out whether the team as a whole is feeling mentally positive, and to look at and to ask the team whether there's anyone in their teams in particular who particularly need help. So awareness in a company is again a very important piece of this, because once you're aware, once people are talking about it, then you're beginning to find solutions to the problem.
Wow. Yeah. So if I just ask one question, I'm just going to go back very, very slightly. You said you had your own, I don't want to say dabble, but you've had mental health issues yourself. You did say that, didn't you?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you're more aware of other people's mental health because you've had your own issues in the past?
Oh, without any doubt at all. And also where I think of the impact that it has on an individual, and how quickly it can affect you, what the answers are, and what you can do to move forward out of it, to break the downward spiral, and to be able to talk to others, to yourself, share experiences, realize that you're not on your own, realize that this is not an unusual situation, and move forward from there.
Wow. So have you got, because the reason I asked that's something I've noticed with pretty much, Jordan's probably said, every single video we do, they're only conscious of other people's mental health because they've had issues themselves, or they've dealt with issues. But the one thing I have, and we still can't crack it, is it's the people who don't or have never had any mental health issues. We don't know how to crack into, I don't want to say that market, but have you got any suggestions on that of people? Because I think where I'm going with that one, I'm not scared to speak to somebody who's never had any issues, because actually I want to find out why they've not had any issues. What are they doing? What are they doing with their life to keep themselves mentally happy?
I think that's a really important point, and I think the way in is to some degree through a comparison of physical and mental health.
Yep.
So if you know someone who's had a heart attack, you may not have had a heart attack, but you know very much what they're going through because you can read about it. But there's still a gap between not having had a mental health issue and having had one, that you can't discuss it in terms of that physical thing. So defining, to me, more of what it is and being open about what it is, I think, is the way into trying to explain to others who haven't suffered from it about what's going on. Because going back to what you've said about the 80-20 rule, most of us, the vast majority of us, are thoroughly decent people who will stretch out to help others in distress, whatever that distress may be. And the more they can recognize all types of those distresses, the more you'll get people to respond to helping them.
Wow. I don't know how to come back from that. That was a brilliant reply. So thank you very much for that.
How are we doing for time? Because I honestly, I'll sit here for hours.
No, we've still got about another 5 minutes or so, didn't we? So yeah.
Excellent. just to comment on that, I think as well, it's making sure that folks understand what the symptoms are, because I'm sure that, you know, if you haven't perhaps, because I think a lot of people are assuming you're going to have sort of a panic attack or anxiety or something's going on, but actually they might have already gone through that, but they just haven't recognized the symptoms at the time. Whereas on reflection, and they've maybe got a friend or family member or colleague who has been through a similar scenario, so actually you have had a mental health challenge, these are what the symptoms are for that, and in the future, if you do feel like that again, these are some of the actions that you can take to be able to get out of that situation. I think that's quite interesting.
Gordon, I completely get that, and I would say that, you know, mental health in a sense, it's not just those panic attacks or anything like that. I think again, all of us, it doesn't matter who we are, have those moments when we say, how on earth am I going to cope with this? We all recognize that as a symptom, and at its extreme end, it is a symptom of a mental health challenge. I think the really interesting thing in terms of symptoms is when your physical body begins to shut down as a result of a mental health issue. So it's that exhaustion which shouldn't be there. It's your physical body telling you, because of your brain, that you don't want to get out of bed, that you're losing energy, that you can't commit to the job in front of you with the enthusiasm and the drive that you normally have. It's recognizing, to me, it's recognizing pieces like that, which is so important, because it's at that stage where the person who's suffering from a mental health problem really needs the support.
Yeah.
They may not know it's mental health, they just may feel they're knackered.
Yeah.
But actually it's much more than that.
Wow. So as you work with some, let's say, institutions, ones which, I'm being quite arrogant stuff here, ones which may not, because you deal with the judges and courts and the legal system, in my head, because I'm not in that world, it feels like very roby and it's never going to change that tradition. But you seen that tradition, you seen mental health being accepted more in the legals and the corporates, or
hugely so.
Okay.
You know, going to court is, forget the robes and the outfits and everything else, it's an incredible stressful situation. And I, you know, it's not just giving justice, it's stopping crime as well. So again, thinking about the mental health issues which must run through the police and the fire and rescue service and the NHS and everything else, we absolutely shouldn't ignore those, because those guys are doing stuff and have done stuff for the last 12 months, which their brains will have told them is a very stupid thing to do. So exposing themselves in the way they have to the pandemic just for the common good is an amazing thing, particularly when the rest of us are all locked up and hidden away and hiding ourselves. These guys have gone out on a limb and done stuff to look after us, which is extraordinary. And I don't think that the mental health issues around that are recognized either. You know, I don't think actually anyone really recognizes the stresses and the strains that those people have been under at all. But that again is bound to have created some real issues for them once they stop and realize what they've been doing.
Absolutely. Well, the funny thing is, we had an interview, a chat, I don't know the term interview, with a doctor a few months ago, Carol Silversky. Silofsky, so I apologise on that. But I asked him, he's a doctor, and I went, how do you deal with your own mental health? And he was like, we don't.
Yeah.
They're literally like machines. I need to stop saying it. I don't mean that how that sounds, but they're so focused on helping other people, they do not look after themselves. And that one comment when he said that terrified me. And actually, there was a paramedic I spoke to a few weeks ago, said it pretty much exactly the same. He went off sick for 2 years.
Well, it goes back to what I said earlier, that as we come out of the pandemic, you know, those problems which have just been shifted to one side in everyone's selflessness to deal with the issues are bound to start to pop out.
Without question. without question, absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, because we are coming to the end of that 20-minute or near about. I think you've answered it, but I apologise if you have. But what do you do to keep yourself happy mentally?
Well, as I've said, you know, exercise to me is vital. Self-time is vital, because that's the way I'm made up. So that time to have a chat with yourself, almost, sounds awful, almost to reassure yourself that you're doing the best you can given the circumstances you find it yourself, to reassure yourself about the fact that you'll never get it 100% right. That is absolutely vital. I think from where I sit too, I've got a funny mind that's very squirrely and drops around, and I find doing different things very refreshing. So I'm not at all masculine in that way, in that I can multitask my work stuff, and I find that a mental health refresher as well. But I'm incredibly fortunate in being able to do that, and I recognize absolutely that I'm very privileged and very lucky to be able to have those pressure valves, as it were,
Yeah.
to be able to keep myself on the straight and narrow.
Wow.
Excellent. I think that probably brings us to quite a natural close. Edward, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I've learned so much, and I think that the advice you've offered has been brilliant, and also the insight both into how you deal with your mental health challenges, but also sharing that you've had mental health challenges previously. I think a lot of folks can definitely relate to that.
Absolutely. But I think, sorry to think, I think I'm going to be honest with you, because I've never spoken to you, Edward, before. I was like, oh, is he going to come in with a robe? Is he going to be all serious and stuff like that? And it just proves never judge somebody until you've actually met them and had a conversation. I'm absolutely pleasantly surprised how human you are, and I think that's a fantastic thing. So it'd be interesting to see what you do over the next few months as well. So it's been a real pleasure speaking to you.
Well, Dan and Jordan, actually, the pleasure has been all mine. I think the fact I've been able to actually publish my thoughts like this has been a great privilege, and the fact that I've been able to talk to the two of you and share in a little way and work with you in a little way to help you with what you're doing with male mental health is a real privilege, a real honor. So thank you both very, very much indeed. It's deeply appreciated.
Good stuff. I'm going to hit stop recording.